that the revitalization project isn't going to happen without public-private partnerships for infrastructure, along with generating TIF dollars up there for the city to be able to invest in that type of
Okay.
thing.
Great. So we talked a little bit about what needs work. What do you think Huber Heights is doing right now that is positive and that is moving in the right direction?
I think a lot of things right now, I think our citizens feel have kind of stagnated. But I look back at kind of some of the projects that happened over the last few years. You know, I think the Rose has been a phenomenal success here in Huber Heights. I think it's put us on the map in a different way. I've attended concerts there. I've talked to people. There are people coming to that venue from all over Ohio, from all over the country. You talk to people from Texas, from Florida. I talk to people from Utah. There are people that are coming here from all over the place. I think that's been a great venue, and I think that is working well. And we can, if you have more questions about that later, we can get into that.
Yeah.
I think the Aquatic Center has been a success. I mean, I know, when I grew up, my dad was a union riffer. My mom was a housewife, and we didn't have a ton of money. But my neighbor, I lived right down almost where Tilbury crosses Harshenville, and the old YMCA used to be there at the dead end of Harshenville, kind of by where Moorfield was at.
I used to ride my bike there all the time.
Yeah, we didn't have the money. I didn't have a Y pass. We didn't have a family pass to the Y. So if I wanted to go swimming, I always had to make sure that it was a day that my neighbor wanted to go. And I went with Gary to the Y on their family pass, so always as a guest. So the fact that we have an amenity here in the city now, this Aquatic Center that anybody can go to for a couple bucks, I think is a good thing. And, I know there's been a lot of people upset about money and, again, with TIF dollars and the amount of money they pay for the land there and what that costs. But it kind of comes down to a lot of things that people just aren't aware of. The bonds that was used to purchase or for the loans for the Aquatic Center, we borrowed those on those Build America bonds. I don't know if you remember when that was going on when Mr. Long was president.
Right.
Saw the shovel-ready projects and all these things. Well, the federal government offered these bonds called Build America bonds. So every year we actually get rebates from the federal government back into the city from those Build America bonds, and that money is not even calculated in the P&L statements every year when we analyze, what the annual revenue was for the Aquatic Center. So it's just making people aware and understand that we do have good things happening in the city here, that not everything is bad, not everything is negative. I think over the last few years, we've had a lot of people, and kind of the sentiment in the city has been people pulling back, people looking at things with kind of a half, glass half empty kind of attitude. And part of my vision is no, think bigger. We can do good and big things, and we can do them in a financially smart and responsible way. And I think the Aquatic Center was one of them. And so the Rose, the Aquatic Center, I think those are good things that the city's done. The city has gone on this the cell tower issue. I think that has been a lot in the news lately. I think the city did a great thing by voting that down in unison. That's a strong signal to the FCC and the federal judge who look at this particular case and know that our city leaders and our city government is fully behind our property owners and our residents. And I hope for a fantastic outcome there, that the judge will rule that there are some rights of the residents that are being kind of trumped on there.
Yeah, we can hope for that, definitely, because I'm
I
with you.
And I think the city coming together in that vote, I think that really does show that that the people that we have on our city council right now do know that, what right is right and wrong is wrong, and can be unified around a good issue. And I think that's really important, the vote that was taken last night at that special meeting. I think that was important, and I think that's going to be important moving forward. Regardless of who becomes the mayor, council has to realize that by working together and compromising, the city moves forward, regardless of who is the mayor. Council has to work together.
They do, and they have to. I'm glad they voted the way they did, because it is the property rights of the people that's most important in that case. That's the way I see it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a physicist like the fellow who owns the land, but it was it was a good vote, and it was a unanimous vote. I congratulate them on that.
It's one of those things where, to me, you look at something like that and you say, okay, I'm the kind of person that believes that freedom is a good thing, and I should be able to have the freedom to do the things that I want to do, but somewhere a line has to be drawn, or I believe is drawn in our Constitution that says, yeah, I can do what I want to do as long as my freedom or what I do doesn't infringe upon the rights of somebody else. I think that's where the line has to be drawn. And clearly in this case, I think what the church was doing was infringing upon the property rights of their neighbor. And I just didn't feel good about that. I just think that was wrong.
Excellent. Now, we talked a little bit about some of the, just a little bit, and we'll get back into that, but the controversial things that happen within the city. And sometimes we see council members on social media. How do you feel social media should be used, or how would you, if elected mayor, how would you use social media, or how would you want the city officials to use social media? I guess a two-parter there.
Sure. I'm not a fan of taking away the right of any city council member from using social media in a positive manner to communicate with the residents in their particular ward, or as in the at-large council members, to be able to communicate with the rest of the city. And I don't want to limit myself to be able to communicate with the residents of the city. So I do think that social media has added a level of transparency. I think that's okay and it's good. I think what's happened, though, is social media has been used to be personal now. And, what I would like to see is that every member on council still has a kind of a government social media page, so to speak. And when they speak to the residents, they use their, Human Rights ward page to be able to make those communications. Then when they're on social media and they're communicating with their families and they're sharing pictures with kids and grandkids and, at the games and the events they go to and things like that, then I think, well, then the personal pages, is good for that part, because they can be personal Facebook and they can have their public Facebook. But ultimately, everybody on council has to be an adult and understand that the things they do and the things they say don't just affect them. It affects, as a public figure, it affects everybody. What they say and how they say it affects the overall image of the city. And, we have these wonderful public forums on Facebook, and there's probably 6 or 7 different forums about Heber Heights that people can post on and share things with.
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody on those forums lives in Heber Heights. There are media personnel, writers, camera people from different media outlets who are on these pages just waiting for the next thing to blow up in Heber Heights so they can jump on it and make a story out of it.
Right.
And I think we just have to have more responsible use of social media. Companies all across this country have social media policies for their employees because they don't want their employees doing anything that would reflect or be detrimental to the company that they represent. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that from a city council perspective, because I think people can use it responsibly. We've seen examples of that happen, and I think it can be used irresponsibly. I think we've seen examples of that as well. So,
do you think
what council's going to have to do is agree? Council's going to have to agree on kind of their own self-regulation on how they continue to use social media.
Do you think the city itself, the city page, should be more active, or do you think they're doing enough? I mean, maybe, I guess, take control of the narrative that's being put out there. Maybe the city could utilize their pages a little more often. Do you feel that they could, or
So
you think it's okay?
You mean like the internet page, or like a social media Facebook?
Like their Facebook page. I think a lot of people aren't really. They're going to the website for different things, but I think a lot of people that are connected to social media really pay attention to that.
Right.
So,
well, I clearly think that look, we just got to have a lot of stuff to feel good about. It doesn't feel good to, you got to have something to talk about to be able to talk about it.
mm-hmm.
And I think right now there hasn't been a ton of things in a positive light to be talking about. And then we have a lot of people who, nobody likes to put themselves out there. And if you give a forum for people to be negative sometimes, they're going to do that. So I think we've got to make sure that we are branding our message and our image as a city and a community. And as long as that always is in a positive light, then absolutely that could be marketed on social media page and in an area to make people aware of all the things that are going on. So yeah, I think you can always look at kind of what you're doing to market yourself. And quite frankly, that is my background is a lot of sales and marketing, and certainly something I would be interested to look at to know how we market ourselves better. I mean, that kind of goes back to one of the whole reasons I'm running. How do we change our image in this region and brand ourselves to where we're not this, I hear people call us Huber-Tucky and things like that. I mean, it literally makes my skin crawl. It drives me crazy. And I want to change that image. So if we can use a social media page to do that, to help rebrand, then absolutely, let's use all the tools in our toolbox.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm going to move on to some of the current events and maybe get your take on that. The last podcast I had, we talked about the issue with the residency requirement for the city manager. As you know, and as those who are listening may know, in last November, the residents voted to keep the language in the charter that requires the city manager to live within the city of Huber Heights or within 6 months. Now, that's been going on almost a year now. Council hasn't touched it. What are your thoughts on that issue?
I thought the language for that happened this past May. And I think some of that ballot language for the charter was in May on the primary ballot. But understand, I mean, timing either way. I don't think it's been going on since November. I think it's been since May. But,
well, the language for the city manager was November. It wasn't for May. There was other charter amendment language in May, but this specific one with the city manager was November during the presidential election as well.
Okay. I mean, the only reason I'm kind of going off of memory is I thought I was at a couple of meetings where a lot of those charter amendments were.
They were. You're right. There were amendments last November, and there were some in May. There was a lot of them, and that I think is.
But we had some discussions. I know one I attended at the senior center.
Yeah.
We had discussions leading up to that May primary about what that residency requirement meant. So I was just remembering that language being back on the May ballot. But
yes, council's been discussing this for even past the vote to try and figure out what to do and how to go about doing it. That's not going to I don't know, anger the residents and not going to anger. Sure. Yeah. So
there's absolutely no doubt that this is a very controversial issue, and I understand 100% the tone of the residents who believe that the city manager should live in the city. And I think that there are so I think that the word should and the word must are very closely related, but I think they are somewhat different.
Okay.
So if someone asks me, should the city manager live in Huber Heights? Absolutely. Right? 100%. City manager should live in the city that they manage. must the city manager